Hi everyone. I like to just start off with a little bit of an improvisation there, partly because it takes a little while for the signal to get out. It takes this kind of a bit of almost a minute delay, so it's nice to just have a little bit of a buffer there. And if any of our frequent watchers can answer this question, what mode was I playing in then? Same mode as last week, my favorite mode to noodle around with and improvise. So that is the trivia question to start off today's stream. I have this is straight water. You know, you might have a glass of wine, you might have a beer, you might be watching in bed, it might be morning, evening, who knows what time it is, but I hope you're well, I hope you're safe, hope you're keeping your sanity and your optimism in a time like this. Martin, hello, all the way over in Sweden. Hey Martin. Great to see everyone here. Dave, of course, is in the chat. Hi Dave, thanks for tuning in. I believe Nikki will probably be in a little later as well. Hey, if you can tell me how is the sound, I'm actually trying a different sound setup today, just as with this little lavalier mic, and I wondered if it might be a little clearer. So Brent is saying that he remembers that it had an augmented fourth. Absolutely. So we were using the G major scale there, and G is 1, A is 2, B is 3, and C is 4. So C, if you augment it, if you raise it a half a step, that's C sharp. Now, but we're still looking for the name of the mode I was using. That is the trivia question. Oh, Dave said he noticed the guitar sounded better. I have been tweaking around with some audio settings, so I'm glad the guitar sounded better. Awesome, great. Well, glad to have you all here. We are going to embark on a most noble adventure. Oh, I saw Dorian, which is a beautiful mode, but it's not Dorian. Lydian, Eric, ding, 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 ding. Eric, you'll be receiving, I don't know what you'll be receiving. You'll be receiving good vibes and relaxation in the mail. Just forward your address and we'll send those good vibes through the post. So Elite Combat Fitness Central has asked, will I have a PDF of the scales that I'll be using today on tablature? Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to do all of these scale workshops in a way that you actually don't necessarily need to use music, because I think sometimes having the sheet music can take away from focus of the left hand. I will, however, you may have noticed in the email that I sent out today that I'm putting all of these workshops on the same page on Classical Guitar Corner, just as a blog post. And I will get a sheet made for you. So all of those, the 4 sort of main sections of the scales will be on that sheet, and I think tablature is a great idea. So yes, the answer is yes, not right this second, but I will have it for you. We'll make it to accompany these replays. And this might be the ending of this set of 4 workshops. I'm sure we could do more, but we might go to a piece of repertoire next week. So I'm sort of doing these 2 4 p.m. slots on Tuesday and Thursday, that's New York time. And this Thursday, as many of you may know in the email again, we will be interviewing Stephanie Jones, who's a young Australian guitarist living in Europe, phenomenal player, very big online following, and I'm keen to interview her. I'll actually be doing the interview for the podcast, but we're going to do it here live and we'll have a Q&A at the end. I think it'll be quite fun. So lots of people saying hello in the chat. Hi Nathan, great to have you with us. Drew, hi Drew. Lovely to see some friendly faces and names. So, oh yes, and Anish was saying that Stephanie does also actually use the same guitar as I use, and that is a guitar by Paul Sheridan. And Paul Sheridan's actually from Perth, Western Australia, where Stephanie's from. So she's got a guitar from her hometown, which is really nice, I think. So everyone's saying hello. It's great to see you all. Thank you very much for being here. Today is the 4th scale workshop. We are going to be working on scales that shift in this workshop. And so please do grab your guitar. You'll be able to join on in. And we sort of ended with shifting last time. And we're going to start with shifting and some left-hand positioning. And then go all the way up to a 3-octave scale, mostly hanging around a 2-octave shifting scale, but discussing a little bit about caged shapes as how they might influence our choice of scale. So I think I have, the bulk of the concept here is about where to shift, where we can shift. So let's get to it. I'm trying to be very relaxed this time. I normally get kind of exhausted and stressed out about these live streams, but today, just like Martin said, it's chill. It's a chill version today, so we're going to be nice and relaxed. It is, for those of you who are from the Academy and are used to playing in live sessions, of course, you know, it's sort of, it triggers the stage fright, the performance anxiety, the sweating or increased heart palpitations, all those kind of things. And so I get a little bit of that with live streams. It's sort of on the new side for me. And so I'm just trying to relax into it actively. So thanks for your patience if I'm trying a little slightly different, but more relaxed style. But I will be diving into the scale part, and then I'm going to be editing those scale things so they're nice and concise without all this fluff at the beginning, and then posting them in the Academy so people can just get straight into it instead of having to find their way through them. Eric Court asked, do I use the Segovia scales? Interesting question. We're definitely going to have some scales, questions, excuse me, at the end. So, but for now, I'm going to grab my guitar and then engage my belly cam, also known as the right hand camera. Yes, left hand, right hand, I can see it all, it's all there. So you can see up this, I might have to do a bit of a leg raise so you can see up to the 12th fret. Oh, actually, we're gonna go up to the 15th fret today. So we're really, gonna climb the heights of the fretboard. Okay, let's get into it. I'd like to start off by just starting off with a nice, easy assessment or placement of the left-hand position. And this is going to be important as we go into shifting for the scales. So let's start by the 3rd string. I want you to hold down 1, 2, 3, 4, the fingers 1, 2, 3, 4 on the frets 5, 6, 7, and 8. This is one of my absolute favorite ways to establish a nice general left-hand position and check in on that left-hand position. This exercise where we just walk across 1, 2, 3, 4 across the strings is one of the most revealing exercises that I come across, especially in the grade exams earlier on, because it really tells me very quickly where someone's hand position is and if we need to work on that at all. So let's just establish this nice left-hand position. I suppose you don't really need my right hand. Anyway, I'll leave it there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and what we're looking for here is that the fingers are on their tips, the fingers are nice and curled, sort of like this, quite a tight curl, not flat and stretched out, nice and curled on the tips. And the first finger is angled a little bit to the outside of the finger. And so it's pointing towards the headstock. The 4th finger is also angled, but to the outer side, the opposite side as your first finger. The 4th finger pointing out towards the bridge. And fingers 2 and 3 are not exactly perpendicular, but they're more or less straight up and down. What you might see your hand doing is collapsing this way, and that creates a straight 4th finger, which makes it a little harder for us to deal with complex classical repertoire, and so we want to bring that around so that it's quite balanced. It's quite a different feeling if you're not used to it. You could maybe, just to feel what it's like in your hand, you could actually overcompensate and go the other way. What is it like to have a straight first finger and a really collapsed, bent over 4th finger? So really just finding that movement there. and then settling on that middle position. Of course, we do all sorts of exceptions to this as we play, but this is a nice middle spot. Great. With that position in hand, I'm going to ask for us just to move that second finger. I'm going to lift up the other fingers, not like this, not straight out, but just still almost touching the string, that close, just hovering above the string. And I want you to move that second finger up 1 fret, down 1 fret. Look at my other fingers as we're doing this. They're really not doing anything. I'm not engaging them. We can go down a fret now to the 5th fret and back to the 6th fret. So this second finger is really great at balancing out the hand. Okay, so we're shifting it like a carriage on a train track. Okay, let's now put down 1, 2, 3, 4 again, reset our hand. The third finger, we're going to do the same thing. So lift up, it might be tricky, lift up 4, 2, and 1, like this. It's almost an exercise in itself. And we're going to just shift down, down, up, up. Right? So it's nice and steady. We've got the same angle in the left-hand fingers. They're just not making contact with the string. So that's the beginnings of the mechanics that we're going to use as we shift. Now, let's start a really easy, straightforward exercise of, we're going to do this. Have a look at my hand before we do it, and then we'll do it together. So it's going to go... This is an ascending chromatic scale, so we've got all the frets here in between 1 and 12, and we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, same position as we were just working on there. And as we shift to the 5th fret, I want you to maintain that hand position, not doing this, right? Not putting the wrist at a different angle and the fingers at a different angle, but rather just keeping everything similar as we're going along the string. Same goes, of course, when we go to the upper position here, which we would call the 9th position, because this is first finger on the 9th fret. So 1st position, 5th position, and 9th position. Let's do it together nice and slow, starting on the 1st fret here. So you can already start with the fingers splayed out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shift. Right? So those points of shifting, sometimes if you feel you need to work on it, you might want to just go 4, 1. That's because obviously that's the weakest link in the chain. With this part is usually less problematic. So 4, 1, 4, 1. Let's do that one more time, and then we're going to start doing some variations. So starting on the 1st fret, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're up in the 9th position. Let's do it in reverse. So all that's going to be different is we have the 1st finger going down to the 4th finger. It's a little bit of a different feeling. So starting up at the 12th fret with all 4 fingers down, and we're going to release them 4, 3, 2, 1 and shift. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's the same principles. We're keeping the left hand nice and steady in terms of that shape and positioning. Some things that will help you along the way here is a guide finger can be used, the 1st finger here. As you shift up, you can leave it lightly touching the string. You can maybe even hear that. And so that's going to help have a tactile guide as you go up. So it's actually going, if we were doing it on a bass string, you'd hear it. So we probably wouldn't use it the same way on the bass strings as we might on the treble strings. On the way down, we can still use the 1st finger as a guide finger, It's a little bit of a different mechanic, but we do move it across, and as we have our fingers splayed out, the fourth is ready to go. So it's a nice way to use that tactile reference point. So let's do it for the last time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up, and then straight back down. 4, 3, 2, 1, shift and shift. All right, together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. 4. Great. So a really nice, straightforward kind of way to practice shifts on one string. Now, let's add a little bit of variation here. What we're going to do is we're going to increase the amount of shifting. And an easy way to do that is we're just going to go 1, 2, 3. Ready? So we're going to go. And what I'm asking you to do on this particular one and the next one as well, try not to accent after the shift. It's very tempting to do this. Because we're moving quickly and lightly with the left hand, there's a tendency to kind of grip and dig into the string and make an accent. This happens a lot in repertoire, so it's a really great opportunity to practice it here. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3 shift all the way up to the 12th fret. Yes, the 12th fret. Up and down, and I want you to focus on not accenting on the first note of each grouping. 1, 2, 3. Great. So let's do exactly the same thing now, and we're just going to do 1, 2, right? So it's going to be 6 shifts. We're upping the amount of shifts. Same concept though, and let's see if we can not accent those shift points. Ready? I'm just going to give you a count in of 2. 1, 2. Back down. And a nice little reference point for you, a benchmark for yourself to do something like that is to go like this. In position, and then do shifting. Do you hear the shifts differently? Does it sound different when you shift? Oops. With the accents, or either maybe a gap between the notes. So it's a nice way to orally benchmark the kind of sound we're aiming for. Great. Now let's finish this off with what we ended the last session, which is a G major scale on the 3rd string. Which is a nice practical application moving away from the chromatic scale. So it's going to go open, first finger on the 2nd fret, A, 3rd finger on the 4th fret, B, and then we shift, 5th fret and 7th fret with 1 and 3, and then shift again, 9th fret, 11th fret, 12th fret. So let's take it nice and slowly, 2 beats each. 1, 2, here we go. Open, first finger, 2nd fret. Shifting to the 5th fret. Can't see my fingers. Here comes a shift, 3, 1. Great. So it's perhaps a nice, if you've really worked on these kind of fundamentals and you're comfortable with your left hand position, you're comfortable with the shifting mechanics, this is a nice scale to work on shifting at the beginning of a practice routine. You can do all sorts of scales. You could do the chromatic, you could do scales on the other strings, all sorts of things. But you can see how the shifting really gets a workout, and also you get a little bit of variety by doing a scale rather than chromatic. You know, chromatic's just very repetitive. So let's move on now to our G major scale. We've been working on the G major scale through all of these last sessions. We started off with 1 octave there in the bass, and then we continued on with 2 octaves. We sometimes talked about using the 2nd degree to round it off and the 7th degree, so we can do. Now today I want to get out of that position and start shifting, so and then maybe even all the way to here. So you can see that the mechanics, a lot of the mechanics are very much the same. What we're introducing is shifting and of course different positions on the fretboard which make it a little more or a little less familiar in whichever way you're going. And also the frets do change their distance, so that's something to get used to as well. So let's just remind ourselves to walk through the 2 octave G major scale in 2nd position, because we're going to use this as our launching pad for all of the other shapes, all of the other sort of shifting patterns. So starting with G in 2nd position with a 2nd finger, we're going to be in 2nd position, so I'm going to call out the finger names because that's, I think, the most useful for the most amount of people. 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, etc. And then keep 1 finger per fret in that 2nd position. So 2, starting on the G, 2 beats each, 3, 4, G, and 4th finger, 1st finger, 2nd finger, 4th finger, and 1, 3, 4 on the next string, 1, 3, 4 again on the 3rd string, 2, 4 on the 2nd string, 1st finger, and 2nd finger. Let's play G again, and go backwards. 1st finger, 4, 2, 3rd string, 4, 3, 2, 4, 3, 1, sorry. 4th finger, 4, 3, 1 again. 4, 2, 1. 4, 2. That's our G major 2 octave scale in 1 position. Now, we're going to play up to this point, up to that C, and then we're going to shift, okay? So let's all start with the G, and we're going to play up to that C, and we're going to just ask you to hold there with that 4th finger. So starting with G, 2 beats each, 3, 4, 2, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, next string coming up, 1, 3, 4, here's where we stop. Okay, so stop there, right on that 4th finger. We have 1, 3, and 4 down on the same string. That's good practice on the same string to have the fingers still down, gives the hand a lot of stability. From there, we are going to shift up to the 7th fret. So you can eyeball the 7th fret, and we're going to feel our 1st finger slide along. We can lift up the 3rd and 4th. 1st finger is going to slide along the string as a guide finger and play that D. It's going to go with that same nice, concise motion in the left hand. So let's try that one more time. Hold down A, B, C, and then we're going to shift up to the D. All right? So that is the part to practice in terms of being that weak link there, because now we're in 7th position and we're going to stay there. So let's play from the G all the way to that D and just pause after that transition so we can focus right into that transition. So a little faster now, 1 beat each. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the shift. Now, if you have that nice hand position we started working on at the very beginning of this lesson, then you'll be in 7th position and your fingers will be ready to play their assigned frets, which is very helpful, especially in scales. It has a lot of exceptions in repertoire, but in scales it's very helpful. So from here, we've got the D. E is played with the 3rd finger, so you can just put your 3rd finger down. Now if you move your 1st finger to the 2nd string, F sharp, and then G. So we just had, okay, 1, 3, 1, 2. So let's start at that D here. We've just shifted. We're going to go 1, 3, 1, 2, and let's go back down as well. So 3, 4. G again. Now here's we're back at our D. We're going to shift one more time. That's that shift, just like we were doing before. So, with all of those mechanics in mind, let's start here on the G. We're going to do 2 octaves. It's going to look like this. We get our first 2 octave shifting scale. So, let's start together here on the G. 1 beat each. 3, 4. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, here comes the shift, D, 3rd finger, F sharp, G again, here's the shift, the success music. So that is shifting on the 3rd string. Now here's a question for you, all these people playing at home. What would be the benefit of shifting on the 3rd string? Why wouldn't we shift on the 2nd string? Why not on the 4th string? Why not on the 5th string or even the 6th string? Hard to say. We didn't have a shifting option on the 1st string here because we already get to our destination in 2 octaves. So why would we or would we not shift on different strings? I'll let that percolate for a little bit. But I do want to say that we can shift on any string. And that's kind of what I want, the main focus of today I want it to be. So opening up that box for you, that Pandora's box of options, and how to figure that out. And this is where we get into the caged scales. So let me just show you. Here's a shift on the 6th string. Here's a shift on the 5th string. Here's a shift on the 4th string. Here's a shift on the 3rd string. This is the one we just did. Here's a shift on the 2nd string. So you can actually shift on any of those strings. And the question that I asked to maybe percolate a little bit of why would you shift on different strings? Well, it's a little bit of a trick question in that there are a variety of reasons. You might want to shift on one of the treble strings because you don't get any string noise. You might want to shift on a string that there is string noise because it keeps the same melodic line. You might want to do something like this. You know, something you might want to do something that has, you want a cello type melody, or right, the Villa-Lobos prelude doesn't sound the same when you do this. It doesn't sound the same. So we have a variety of reasons to shift. In general, shifting works really well on those treble strings because they're smooth and they're nylon and there's no sound. But there can be many other reasons to choose shifting on different strings. That's why it's good to know how. Now, this is the key to unlocking this next pattern up here. We've dealt with this pattern. So we're going to deal with another pattern now. And basically what we're doing when we shift is we're bridging. We've got here, this is what we call the E major shape. And we're going to bridge between that and what we call the C major shape. No one screenshot that and do terrible things with it. So here's let me explain what I'm talking about. I do have a course on this in the Academy, and the reason I mention that is because it's a whole course. It's very hard to sort of summarize very quickly about it from the point of chords through to patterns and then scales. But just to jump straight to the point, let's all play this. This probably is a familiar scale to most people. It's a C major scale in first or open position. First position. Right? You just run through that. Remind yourself. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Maybe you can even play the C major chord. Just remind yourself of that shape, how that fits in the hand. Now, this is in first position. We're not using our fourth finger, just 3 fingers, but there is another helper in this process, and that is the nut. The nut is allowing us to play open strings. Right? So that's actually part of that scale, playing the open strings. Now, if we were to substitute that nut with our first finger, then we'd be playing the scale with 4, 3, and 2. And it would look something a little like this. I'm just substituting the entire. Here's what it looks like, just the C major scale. Right? The movements are relative, the finger spaces are relative. Just to make this ultra clear, here's that same shape, shifting at 1 fret at a time. Then we're at G. Right, so that's why I'm calling it the C major shape, because our first position scale fits that shape, and then we can translate that into different keys. So let's start by playing 4th finger, 5th string, 10th fret. It's a G, that's the note G. I know this is the badlands of the guitar fretboard for a lot of people. That's okay. That's a G. And now we're going to be very naughty here, as Ben would say, and think only in patterns. Don't worry about the notes. So we're going to play that 4, and then 1, 1, 3, 4, then 1, 3, then 1, 2. Do you remember we played this just before? At the top of our G major scale? That's because that's connecting to this shape. Let's start again. 4th finger, 10th fret, 5th string. 4, 1, 3, 4. Next string, 1, 3, 1, 2. You notice how we're starting with 1 on each new string? That's because we're taking the role of the nut down here. Now if we keep going down, just like if we kept going down here, going through all the natural notes, we would start on that 4th finger there, 4th finger, 10th fret, 5th string, then 3rd finger, 1st finger, then 6th string, 4th finger, 2nd finger, 1st finger. Okay, I went through that quickly, and maybe if you go over this a few times and sort of let it sink in, that's great. It's not something when I've taught it to individuals that it's immediately like, oh, that's obvious. If that happened to you, fantastic. But you know, go easy on yourself and give yourself some time to let that sink in. But follow me along with these shifting patterns, And let's see if we can now go through the challenge of playing that 2-octave G major scale and shifting on each different string. So we're going to start in 2nd position and end in 7th. I'm going to just do ascending for the moment. So we're going to start with our G. All right, 2nd finger, 3rd fret, then A. Now I'm going to ask you to shift your 1st finger to the B, 7th fret, 6th string. All right, now let's continue. 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. Now we've made it to the octave, that's the G. Now let's continue on for the 2nd octave. 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 1, 2. Okay? Here we're going from 2nd position, and the rest is in 7th. I'm going to whip through this. Now let's go to the 5th string as our transition string, our shifting string. So starting here with G. G, A, B, C, D, and pause there. Now we're going up to what fret? The 7th fret, so we're in 7th position. So 1st finger is going to do the same thing. We can even use the guide finger and we can hear it. It's an E. Now put down your 3rd finger. There's that octave. We've hit G again. Keep going. 1, 3, 4. Maybe it's starting to feel more familiar now. Okay, let's now shift on the 4th string. I know I'm moving through this quickly, but these are things you can review and let it sink in. So 2 on the G. Ready? And G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and here's the octave. We hit the octave while staying in 2nd position. Now we're going to shift. I'm going to shift up to the 7th fret. 1, 3, 4, then 1, 3, then 1, 2. Now we're going to shift on the 3rd string. We already worked on this, so hopefully it's a bit more familiar. Let's start on G. 3, 4. Hold there. We're at C. I'm going to shift up to the 1st finger on the 7th fret and keep going. And great. Now let's shift on the 2nd string. This isn't redundant work because it really gives us a nice way to connect positions and notes on the fingerboard and helps us learn notes as well if you're counting, saying the note names. Okay, starting in G, and we're going to shift on the 2nd string. 3, 4. Hold there. You're going to shift our 1st finger to the 7th fret, then just play 1, 2. Now, this. What could we do up there? Now connecting, we sort of went very quickly through all those different options, and you can impress your friends as a party trick. Look, I can shift on every string. Oh, messed it up. And no one will be impressed, except probably any other guitarist in the room. So, now I'm going to very quickly, but with the same principle, add a 3rd octave. So if we ended here, right, we're on a G. So we're looking for one more octave. G, put down your, holding down G there. 2nd string, 8th fret. Yes. Then 4th finger. 1, 2, 4. And these notes are usually a bit more familiar. So that's B, C, D. Now, we can go, Drew said, I'm impressed. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to link up to the 12th fret, can't even see, And this is basically like playing these 3 notes up, down in the first position in what we would call the G major shape, because it looks like the G major chord. Same up here. Sorry, so I have to lift up a little bit, a little hard to maneuver. But it's maybe this is something I'll show you briefly and you can work on, because it's more about you making the connections yourself than me showing it, if that makes sense. And that this is I like this method of interlocking the guitar fingerboard. That's why I wrote a scale book, and the whole thing is based on caged scales. And all the scales, the majority of scales you'll find in the practice routines are all based on caged scale systems. So I'm going to take our G major 2-octave scale up to here, shifting on the 3rd string like we practiced the first time. You can join in. Starting on G, 3, 4. I'm going to shift. Now here we've made it to the top of the 2nd octave. We're going to play 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. So 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. And then 1, 3, 4. So we shift it up just like we did before. We're going to shift 1, 3, 4. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, the 3rd octave. Voila! Okay, so this will be available for replay publicly, so if you want to revisit some concepts, I know I went through it very quickly, but you can rewatch it perhaps, and that will hopefully help. So, just checking my notes. I like to end with something different than we've been working on the whole time, just to give a little bit of flavor. And Bonnie, yesterday, no, it's Tuesday. Bonnie on Sunday played this beautiful barre tremolo piece, and we were talking about tremolo. And so a nice, sorry, been talking too much, I get caught up with my breath. A nice way to practice tremolo is actually to play P-A-M-I on 1 string. The reason that's nice is because you can really hear the rhythmic aspect of it. We can sometimes have fingers that are out of sync on an arpeggio, or maybe even normal tremolo, and we won't hear the relationship between thumb and A that clearly. But on a single string, you really will hear if they're nice and even or not. So, we are going to play we'll do a 2-octave shifting scale with P-A-M-I. Now, can anyone wonder, well, after we play this, I'll answer this question, but the question for you is, why would this be a really good right-hand fingering to test out your shifting? Okay, so P-A-M-I, it's tremolo, oops, here we are, P-A-M-I, tremolo fingering. We're going to play a 2-octave G major scale, shifting on the 3rd string. Ready? Maybe a bit slower. 1, 2, 3, 4. Start on the G, let's go back down. Ready? And... So, the question I posed was, why would this fingering be good to practice shifting in the scales? And the reason is, if we're playing quarter notes on shifting, there's quite a bit of time that passes between these two notes. And that might encourage a disconnect in notes, a staccato, when we're often looking for legato. And so by doing this, we actually have very little time to have our hands move. So we're held accountable by the right hand fingering to keep the movement very light and agile so that it will fit between the 4th, 16th note of the tremolo back to the 1st. So we don't miss some notes in between. It's just a nice, some kind of exercises have inbuilt accountability, and I quite like those, especially for online teaching. So that wraps up our 4th scale workshop, and we're going to put a little bit of a pause on that for the coming weeks ahead, as we might dive into some repertoire in the next couple of weeks. But I'm going to take a sip of water, and does anyone have any questions? I will remove guitar belly cam so I can things you don't think about when live streaming. So how was that for everyone? Did that make sense? Did it, was it, I'm curious to know for people if I move too fast, or maybe the replays are okay with that. Please let me know. So let me see if there are any questions. I know there was a question about the Segovia scales earlier by Eric, but we already have gone at least 40 minutes, including my gas bagging at the top of the hour. But I want to address the question about the Segovia scales. I did write an article on the blog. Maybe Dave, you could put a link in to the chat for the article I did on the Segovia scales. That kind of has all the answers I would tell you now, or answers, the ideas that I would tell you now. But basically, so as I understand it, so Segovia used to teach at 2 places in the summer. He taught at Santiago de Compostela in Spain, and also Siena in Italy. And one of these times, he would practice his scales, and one of those times one of the students asked, what are you practicing with these scales? And so he wrote them down and handed them off to the student. And somehow, you know, through the magic of publishing, and that became the Segovia scales. I don't think it was some great tome, as in this is the only and the best way to practice scales. It was just the way he was practicing scales. And they go through the different keys, and they use different types of shifting, and they're very, very good. And I think the reason I want to address them is there's a little bit of legend / mythology around them that they are the scales to practice. They're not his scales, they're just the scales we just did, but he's choosing to shift at different places. So you're choosing slightly different fingerings, different shifting points. That's all it is. So you could, Judy is watching, Judy Gordon could create her own set of scales that go through the different octaves and call them the Gordon scales, and they would be fine. You know, as long as they follow strong shifting tenets and good, you know, fingering purpose, then they'll work. My scale book was written. Sorry, Dave. I just saw that the emoji that was translated from your hyperlink. I wrote this book of scales. It came out of my studies as a student, and I was working on sight reading, and I was using the caged system as one of the topics to talk about. And I liked and do like systems, and they intrigue me. So I think it's a way, not the way, but a way to conceptualize the guitar. And to fast forward on what we were doing, we were going between the E shape and the C shape and then the G shape. And there are 5 shapes that make up sort of it's not really an acronym, but the cage, C-A-G-E-D. They reference chord shapes: C major, A major, G major, E major, and D major. And you can shift between these. So, and I just like this as a system. So, you know, I haven't done this for a while. Okay, so this is a G major scale. Is it? Yeah, that's a G major scale there with the A major shape. I don't know why I'm doing this. The A major shape. So I could do this. Yeah. So I'm going E major shape, then I'm going 1, 2, and then going to the A major shape. And then of course you can do the D major shape. Well, that's going to be down here. Once you get used to the shapes, you can basically interlock them together, which is quite a nice way of doing it. So you can, here's the G major shape. Here's the G major shape connecting with the E major shape. Here's the G major shape connecting with the D major shape. Right? So you can do it, all sorts of interlocking, and I like that. I like it's sort of a quick interlocking. As I said, it's not the way to conceive of the fingerboard, it's a way to do it. So, I see Thomas Crown is asking about the cage scales, and I sort of, you might have to, I'm not sure if you were here for the whole thing, but to answer this specific question, what do I mean by shape? We have a set of chords that are very familiar in folk music and pop music, very familiar, very common ways to play a chord. So this is C major. That shape might look familiar with you. This is A major, G major, E major, and D major. And if we're not thinking about the notes and pitches, but the physical shapes and where they fall on the fingerboard, those are the shapes we're talking about. So the extension that happens from these shapes, if we talk about bar chords, this is often where people reference the cage system, is in bar chords. The C major shape, then replace the nut, it looks like this. You can move them around the fingerboard. So they're called movable shapes. The C shape, A shape, A major chord, add a bar, use different fingers, A major shape. G major shape, this is a tricky one to do as a bar chord. So often we just use it as partial, that top part. G, E major shape, very commonly used bar chord shape. A major, no, we already did that. D major. Judy said, sometimes you feel like a nut, as in like, yeah, you know what, I don't want to do a bar chord, I'm just going to use the nut. I agree. So, that's the concept, and then of course those are bar chords, and then we can apply the same principle to scales, and that's where we get the shapes for scales. And they encompass not all, but many of the possibilities that we might encounter. So, oh, Lynette said a light bulb moment. Great. It's a concept I have struggled to communicate succinctly. I did that course, but I think maybe I could do it. It's something that I've never been able to communicate. It always takes a little while to comprehend. So, and I think that's my responsibility to clarify how I communicate it. Okay, let's see. I'm just gonna, there's quite a lot of comments. Thank you everyone for putting in the comments. I'm just gonna see if anyone had any questions. James Murphy asked, do I change the wrist angle for tremolo? Not particularly. I think tremolo is a really nice synthesis of technique where in order to do it well, many aspects of your technique need to be in a good place, and that includes the right hand position. Also contact points, nail shape, finger movement. That's why it's, in part, it's such a coveted technique. Giselan said, I understood everything. It's a miracle. I'm glad. Great, so I'm going to see if there's any questions that are coming down the bottom. I don't think so. Yes, so Thomas, yes, it's regarding left-hand shapes. Shapes on the guitar are good because they provide shortcuts and we don't have to think about what we're playing, but they're also bad because they provide shortcuts, because we don't have to think about what we're playing. It is one of the reasons that sight reading can be an issue, because we can overly rely on shapes. This is a great question from Brent. Really great. So the question is, why, Brent, as an oboist, notice that all the shapes are sharps. They're in the sharp world. And the reason is that flat keys on the guitar start to remove the ability to use open strings. And open strings are very useful on the guitar, as you probably know. They help us play things. If we have to, and so flat keys, let's go around the circle of fifths. So we've got C major. C major allows, because they're all natural notes, that means in the key of C, we have an E, an A, a D, G, B, and E. Okay, let's go anti-clockwise around the circle of fifths. F, how many flats does F have? That's one flat, that's a B flat. So we just lost our second string, right? We don't use the second string open, and you're going to see that quickly escalates. Okay, B flat has two flats, that's B and E. So we lose our B and then both E's. So we've suddenly lost three open strings. And as we go around, the next flat is A, lose the fifth string, the next flat is D, and lose that string. So we very quickly, by the time we've hit A flat major, we now don't get to use 5 out of the 6 open strings, which means we're going to be using a lot of barres. So in order to play in flat keys, which happens with woodwind players or singers, when we accompany singers, we will often use a capo, because we want to play in B flat, we just treat it like A major and away we go. So capos come into great use when dealing with flat keys. So that is the fundamental practical reason that we live in a sharp, sharp world here in the guitar. Martin, a whole new world has opened up with the cage patterns. I'm glad. Yeah, it is fun, depending on what you think is fun. It is fun to explore those patterns, and you make a lot of connections. There's a lot of things in music, like the circle of fifths, for example. There's a lot of interconnectivity of patterns and math and shapes, and that can be fun. It's fun to explore it. So I do encourage you to, like I said, if you can map out the caged shapes yourself, I think that will be infinitely more useful than me trying to, say it verbatim or explicitly. So I did do that scale. People are asking if I had the book or this. The very first thing I ever wrote or created for Classical Guitar Corner was a scale book, and I believe it's still available somewhere as a PDF. And it's good. I mean, it follows that principle, and it's very comprehensive with thirds and octaves and tenths, and goes from 1 octave to 2 octave to 3 octaves in each key. There are a couple of typos in it, I think, that I need to probably redo for maybe our 10th anniversary. But I will say that the scales in the practice routines, there's scale sets at the end of every single practice routine, they incorporate those very same scales. And by, I can see here looking at practice routine 15, you'll see, what can I see? There, C shape, A shape, G shape. So I do still adhere to those shapes because I think it's a nice way of organizing the scales. So they're in there, and I think the practice routines are a much more practical application instead of a book, a slightly encyclopedic book of scales. Oh, good, Brent. I'm glad that answered the question. Christopher Jones, do I plan a workshop on minor scales or arpeggios in the future? Sure. Yeah, minor scales throw a couple of other things, and I mean, obviously I did major and minor scales in the scale book, and the reason I bring that up is because I went through this process of finding out that minor scales throw a lot of spanners in the works. They adhere a little less to shapes. Some of those shapes are less feasible, like a C minor shape as a bar chord doesn't really work. You know, they're just less accessible, but it still works. You can still get shapes. So this is C minor, because the reason it's tricky is because that E is flat. C, Brent, flats are bad. So to do that as a bar chord would be this. Maybe it's up here, it's a little easier, but down here it's really not comfortable at all. So yes, minors. I don't know if I'll do another workshop on minors. That's a great idea, actually. I hadn't thought about it. I just stuck to G major so we'd have a nice building foundation on each one. But all of the principles that I went through apply to any particular scale. Oh, Roman's gone through the Segovia patterns. Yeah, I mean, patterns everywhere. It's like a beautiful mind. Oh, and another thing with minor keys is that there's three types of minor scales. We have the natural minor, also known as the Aeolian mode. And let's take A minor for an example. That's the notes, natural notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. The most common practical usage of a minor scale, however, is with a raised seventh. And in the key of A minor, that would be a G sharp. And the reason is that the dominant chord, E major, would have that G sharp in it. And so in Western harmony, we change that seventh from a G natural to a G sharp. But in terms of voice leading, it sounds a little odd. So this is the Aeolian mode, A minor, natural minor. All natural notes, just like C major, but starting on A. Then here's it with the raised seventh. There's that G sharp from E major. Right? And that almost, that leap there, sounds almost like that flamenco sound, that Phrygian scale. It's quite a leap, a very distinct leap. So, for voice leading purposes, we're delving into theory a bit here. For voice leading purposes, especially by the music of Johann Sebastian Bach and for vocal parts, they would use a third type of minor scale called a melodic minor scale. Melodic, so named because it's very useful for melodies. So on the way up, we'd have A, B, C, D, E, and then F sharp. The sixth is raised, and the seventh is raised. And on the way down, they're all natural. So they're different on the way up than they are on the way down. So in terms of the practicalities of writing a scale book, that means you've got to write 3 times as many scales and so you have to make some sort of editorial choices. What's the point of practicing a melodic scale versus a harmonic scale versus, so there's some questions there. I may have gone on a tangent and I apologize. Workshop on modes. Yeah, modes are very interesting. I feel like I'm still learning, exploring modes myself. So, well, it's 5:06 on a Tuesday evening. It was an absolute pleasure. I think I might wrap it up there. There's probably some questions in there as well. I apologize if I skipped over some. But I believe so I'm still going to be doing these sessions aiming for, I quite like Tuesday at 4 and Thursday at 4. I like the consistency of the timing. In the academy, we also do sessions at Sunday at 4 for performance groups, an open mic. It's a nice time. So plan on Tuesday and Thursday at 4 next week, if you're interested in joining in. I'm going to look at a piece of repertoire next week, and then this Thursday at 4, we have Stephanie Jones, a phenomenal young musician based in Germany, but from my home country of Australia, plays the same guitar as I do. And I have a lot of curiosity about her experiencing the online world with social media and YouTube and recordings, because she's really quite masterful at all of that. So I'm curious to hear from her. So that's this Thursday at 4. Same bat time, same bat channel. I saw someone was asking for the book again. This is the book. Yep. And you can go to cgcpublishing.com. That's where all the books are. So yeah, thank you everyone. Yes, Martin, it's almost midnight heading over there, so time to go. But thanks everyone, it's really fun. Always fun to be here with you all, albeit digitally. I will see you all soon. I always struggle to know how to sign off because I know I cut it off early. I need like an outro music or something. But anyway, take care, stay safe, be healthy, and I'll see you soon. Bye.